When I was 14, my friend Drew and I were playing video games in my parents' basement, our favorite pastime whenever we got the chance to hang out. On this particular day, our enjoyment was abruptly interrupted when I heard a couple of approaching voices. It was not only my dad, but Drew's as well, breaking from tradition of calling us upstairs when it was time for him to go home. For some unknown reason, today, they were coming to us. This is trivial, right? Who cares? I cared. I nearly jumped off the couch, urging Drew to do the same as I turned off the TV. Before he could even respond, I was ushering him toward the door just as our dads reached the other side. As they prepared to enter, I barged out, managing to prevent them from setting foot in my game room. The four of us all headed back upstairs together. Crisis averted. No, I wasn't hiding bottles of beer. I was afraid of someone seeing how many video games I owned. As a kid, I learned quickly that I had a unique connection with video games. Many of my prepubescent peers enjoyed the hobby too, but nobody seemed as drawn to the medium as myself. Nobody seemed to love video games like I loved them. This fact was of no relevance to me until it morphed into ammunition. At the age of 8 or 9, I got sucked into a heated argument with some kids on the playground. I haven't the slightest idea what we were fighting about. In fact, I can't remember a single detail about the exchange except for the last line that was hurled in my direction. "Wilson, you're a loser. All you do is play video games." That was the first moment I can recall witnessing a negative perspective of video games. For the first time, my mind was invited to contemplate that there might be something wrong with this hobby that I held so dearly. Over time, this perception began plaguing me more severely. As I grew into my teenage years, I repeatedly bore witness to the developing societal hypothesis that video games were for the lonely, for the isolated, for the losers. Why was this perspective gaining steam? Maybe it was born from the fact that video games are a relatively new medium, acting as a perfect scapegoat for those looking to explain violent outbursts and rhetoric from the youth. Perhaps it's attributable to the inherent asocial, cerebral nature of playing video games, a decisive contrast from the communal qualities of physical sports. Whatever the reason, my anecdotal evidence, along with typical teenage angst, began to make me feel increasingly like an outcast. By the time I was in high school, I stopped having anyone over to my house. I couldn't risk them seeing my video games. As the preferred methods of recreation amongst my peers transitioned into partying and underage drinking, I stopped going out much either. My social calendar grew progressively emptier. By the time I'd reached college, I was playing video games more consistently than ever, and feeling more ashamed about it by the day. It was a bizarre juxtaposition. I loved the medium, but felt like a failure for participating in it. I felt like an embodiment of every insult I'd ever weathered. Perhaps I was a loser. It was my sophomore year of college when I decided to take a film course. Storytelling had always been of interest to me, so I decided to dip my toes. It was a small class, no more than 20 students. I was taken with it almost immediately. I couldn't believe such a course could exist in conjunction with statistics and American government. It's perhaps unsurprising that in addition to being enraptured by the curriculum, I began to grow a connection with some of my classmates. We all liked movies after all, and after discovering that we all lived in the same dorm, we began walking back from class together. It was really nice. Unfortunately, one day, that pleasant sensation came crashing down when my 3 newfound friends made a horrific suggestion. They wanted to hang out in my dorm room. This couldn't happen. It wasn't an option. My dorm room was perfectly clean. There weren't any strange smells or embarrassing posters hung on the wall. What it did contain, however, was my entire video game collection, likely totaling 300 titles. How foolish of me to have brought my games with me to school. How could I have risked a scenario like this? I tried to redirect the conversation in a different direction, to no avail. I couldn't turn my new friends away, so I obliged. Still, the fear of what they would say grew. What would they think of me? I mean, one of them was a girl. As they entered my room, I held my breath. My heart beat out of my chest. The group quickly gravitated to my shelves of games. They sat on the floor to examine them more closely as I sat in panic behind them. After what felt like an eternity of silence, that girl turned around and looked at me. "Wilson, this is awesome." I couldn't believe my ears. Before I could even process her statement, she was pulling a game off the shelf. She began asking me questions about it as she studied the cover. My other friends began to do the same. We must have sat and talked about video games for an hour. I felt like a celebrity, like some sort of nerdy, introverted tour guide. My shelves of embarrassment morphed into a public library of fascination. My love of video games had enhanced my connections, not ended them. That evening acted as a tsunami of epiphany. The fear of exposure that had gripped me so tightly began to lose its strength. What was there to expose? I loved video games. I owned a lot of them. So what? These facts became talking points for me. When someone asked me what I enjoyed doing for fun, boy did I have an answer. Upon reflection, there's no doubt that I've occasionally lost the balance between my hobby and the rest of my life. There are plenty of times that I should have put the controller down and gone to the party. Too much of a good thing usually turns bad, but doing something you love should never, ever bring shame. It's now been almost 10 years since I took that film class. Recently, I hosted a party at my apartment, something that I could have never imagined doing in the past. Everyone ended up in my room at one point of the night, where my video game collection now resides, bigger than ever. My friends were looking at all the games, reminiscing about the memories they'd had when playing them. I reminisced with them. I really wish the younger version of myself could have seen that night. I wish the version of myself so eager to prevent my friend's dad from discovering my secret could see that one day that secret would bring people together. I wish he could see how much joy his secret would bring. More than anything, I wish my younger self could have realized far sooner that it's okay to be passionate. It's okay to embrace what you love. It's okay to play video games.